welcome everyone to this webinar entitled BELIS Network, Legume Breeding for Agroecological Transition in Europe. Probably everyone knows about it, but this activity is organized in the framework of the Horizon Europe Project BELIS. My name is 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗏𝗂𝗏. I'm an agronomist, project manager at 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗂𝗏 in Spain. 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗏𝗏𝗏 is the Mediterranean Agronomic Institute of Zaragoza, the Spanish Institute of 𝗕𝗘𝗏, which is the International Center for Advanced Agronomic Mediterranean Studies. We are leading the work package dedicated to the BELIS breeding actors, platform, networking, communication, dissemination, and transfer. Before we start this webinar, and for your information, we have enabled the question and answer option for the audience in this Zoom session. So as you can see in this part of the screen, there's an option in the, if you look closely, you will find the option at the bottom of the application of Zoom, of the platform. So if you have any questions, please type them in there, and we will address them at the most appropriate time. Try not to use the chat box, but to use the Q&A section for if you have any question that you would like to ask to the speakers. So I would like to thank all the attendees who are joining us today, as well as the BELIS colleagues who will be presenting during this webinar. So I will stop here and give the floor to my colleagues Antonio López Francos from 𝗕𝗼 Zaragoza and 𝗕𝗿𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 from 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 for the opening and welcome of the session according to our program. So we are having Antonio López Francos in first place. So Antonio, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Joaquín. So I am Antonio Francos. I'm working at Mediterranean Agronomic Institute of Zaragoza, 𝗕𝗼 Zaragoza. I'm making team with Joaquín and with 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 and with the rest of the project members on the outreach activities of BELIS. So it means networking, communication, dissemination, and transfer to users. So BELIS is an innovation action project supported by the Horizon Europe program, and we expect that it will contribute to the legume breeding sector and in general to legume cultivation in Europe. So that's why engaging with breeders, farmers, and final users is so important for us. And among these outreach activities, today we are starting with two, the BELIS webinar series and the BELIS Network. In the program of today, we wanted to start our first webinar with a general topic that concerns the whole legume community. And this is the presentation of the review work done by our project colleagues on the topic of legume breeding for the agroecological transition in Europe. This links the activity of most of you as legume breeders, growers, or users with the current paradigms of the transition and agroecology, which are somehow guiding nowadays the European Union vision on agriculture. And then we will have an outlook of the BELIS project by our project coordinator, Dr. Bernadette Juliet from INRAE France, who will explain what are our aims and our plan of actions during the next 4 years. And finally, Claire will present the BELIS network, and she will request you for some interaction, proposing you some questions that will help us to better shape the network plans to the needs of the legume breeding and legume seed users community. Thank you very much for your presence, and I hope you will enjoy this webinar and you will join us in the BELIS network and also in our next webinars and in other fora and dissemination activities we'll organize. So now I give the word to 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 so she can say a small word about the BELIS network and propose you a first question before we start with our first presentation. Claire works at the Technical Institute 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 in France, in charge of the grain legume genetics program. Claire, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Antonio. So I'm 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 from Terinovia. I think most of you received already my email with a proposition to register to our BELIS network.
Claire, sorry, I'm so really sorry to interrupt. Could you please put it in presentation mode?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So my words will be about the BELIS network after the Bernadette Juliet presentation about the BELIS project. It will be an interactive session with some questions that you will have the opportunity to answer in live, and we will discover the answer in live also. So it will be very informative for everybody. And what I propose to you is to help you discovering this tool and try this interactive manner of apprehending a webinar to answer a first question. So we will use a Slido. Here is a link. So maybe Joachim, you could share this link into the chat, so everybody can go to this web page to answer the question. So my first question is about your expectation regarding the BELIS network. Why did you come to this webinar? And in few keywords, what are the ideas you have in mind regarding the BELIS network? So you can either join the slido.com and with this QR code, or with the link that Joachim shared into the chat. So yeah, here we have some first answer. Can you see it? Yeah, knowledge sharing, strengthen legume breeding efforts, future challenges of legume cultivation in fields. Yeah, knowledge sharing comes again. Contact, innovation, connection with 𝗕𝗏𝗏 Legumes Network, learns about opportunities for legume networks, networking, collaboration. So it's very good. Contacts, legume cooperation, networking, knowledge sharing and networking are the two main words. So it's really the aim of the BELIS network. So it's good. Collaboration comes also. Knowledge transfer, update on breeding activities in BELIS, innovation, exchange of ideas, contacts and networking. So yeah, I think introduction to new techniques and state of the art.
Yeah, I think, Claire, if I may, this is Joaquin, while everyone is putting some text, I think that Bernadette, if I'm not mistaken, we have someone in the audience from INRAE raising the hand, is not from 𝗕𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, if I'm not mistaken. Bernadette?
Yes, thanks. Yes, Grégoire has raised his hand. Grégoire, could you?
Yeah, let me allow, Gregory, you should be able to unmute yourself now and speak.
Or could you ask your question in the Q&A section?
I don't have any question. I can speak, but I don't have any question. Did I? Oh, sorry. It was a mistake. Sorry.
Okay. So it's perfect because I see that, the Slido works, the link works. You can all give answers. So I propose that you have some, a few seconds more to answer, and then we will go to the next presentation. So the main words that you can see that have been put are knowledge sharing, legume networking, collaboration, networking, breeding, contacts, future challenges of legume cultivation in fields, new opportunities. So it's really our aim in this BELIS network to propose knowledge sharing and legume networking. So we all agree on that. So thanks a lot for all your questions. And now I will stop sharing my screen, so you won't be able to answer anymore. So there is still one person typing, and after that, I will stop. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Claire. And now we are going directly to the next point in our agenda, which is the presentation of the paper Legume Breeding for the Agroecological Transition of Global Agri-Food Systems, European Perspective. For that, we have Diego Rubiales from EASC CSIC Spain, Carlota Bazpato from ITQB Portugal, and Paola Nicchiarico from CREA Italy. I would like to remind the audience that if you have any question, the Q&A option is enabled. So in case you have any question, For the speakers, please don't hesitate to type them there. So we start with Diego Rubiales introducing this section. So Diego, the floor is yours.
Sorry, I was muted myself. Good morning, everybody. I'm trying to share my screen. Do you see it? Do you see the presentation?
Yeah, it's perfect. You can go ahead.
Okay. Because I don't see it. So I have to look, sorry, I have to look to the second screen. I am here just to present as a kind of introduction early paper that we produced in 2021, the people that are here in the audience, Bernadette Julier, Paolo Chiarico, Carlota, and myself, trying to give a kind of opinion paper on the needs on breeding legumes under the new development, the new agroecological conditions with an European perspective. So I will start here giving a brief introduction on the needs and the process of cultivar obtention and variety registration in this framework. And this will be followed by Carlota Bazpato, and then by Paolo and Bernadette. So coming to this, we in face of the need, a general view that we need a wider and more profitable legume crop cultivation that is indispensable, is needed to as a major step in the agroecological conditions of global agri-food systems. Is needed. There is a general consensus of the added value of the legumes in the cropping system for the saving nitrogen, for the environmental benefits, for the reduced fingerprint of carbon print, for uses of resources, increased biodiversity. But this is a major challenge on how to effectively introduce legumes, making them profitable. And here plant breeding is pivotal in this context. So we are referring here, you have the paper that we are referring, you have the link how to study in more detail, because I can only give very general introduction. So we have the general agreement that the are key in animal feed, both the grain legumes and the forages and pastures legumes, but are also key in human diet, but mainly that they are very important for sustainable agricultural and clean and healthy environment. And for this, we need to not only to eat, consume more legumes, but to grow. Just to give you I hope you see the pointer. Just to give starting with a Spanish perspective, if you see here the general trend of legume cultivation, production or in red, or acreage in green, the last century, a decrease that is fortunately is stabilizing and starting to increase again. There was an remarkable increase of imports, mainly of soy for animal feeding. Even the legumes that we produce, being Spain one of the largest legume producers in Europe, that quarters of the chickpeas, lentils, or faba bean, or common beans that we eat are imported. And the general trend is just to, if you look that in the 60s, we were eating about 13 kilos of food legumes per person per year, has 3, and now is increasing 3.4, but we are still much lower than before. However, meat consumption has increased from 20 kilos per person by that time to around 60 today. So in a wealthier economy, the tendency has been to decrease legume consumption by human. Is meat what is good, there is not the nutritionists recommend. So the recommendation is to have more legumes, a little bit meat. So mainly important to consider that the meat that we produce, apart from the important pasture and forages, is mainly produced by imported. Automatically is very, but still today, Spain is a major exporter of meat, what is good. It's an excellent industry, but is fed mainly with not only legumes, also subproducts of sunflower or canola after extracting the oil, wheat. But of the legumes, the animal feed is mainly, almost exclusively, soybean imported. We have in Spain is not only a major exporter of meat, but also a major exporter of animal feed, producing more than just figure for 22, more than 37 million of animal feed. What is impressive industry that mainly use of the legumes, mainly use only soybean. They are ready to adopt more peas or faba beans, but here they pay little. So they are ready to introduce more peas or faba beans in the factories, provided that we have an uniform and supply at a low price, what is difficult to compete with soybean. Fortunately, as I said, I cannot go on the ecological benefit for the environment, for the nutrition of the legumes, the nitrogen, and so on. But what is true is that in the last 10 years, not longer, we are experiencing a consumer perception, a change in the consumer perception, being far more concerned on health. So legumes that are not cool ago are starting to be cool again and becoming trendy, not only for the vegans or for the vegetarian population, but also for the general, for normal consumer that like to have more legume products like hummus or salads or whatever. And we need to be prepared to supply with this. Putting this into the European perspective, I could find only data of grain legumes that are in this figure. You can see that has been a decrease of not big increase in the past decades, but this is changing in the last decade, since 2020, probably due to this change in the consumer perception. So what we are experiencing in Europe is a remarkable increase of soybean, European soybean, but still this is far for being able to provide the needed amount for the industry. But so it's mainly being used for human consumption, but also organic soybean. But organically, European bred soybean, dry pea is also increasing markedly, faba bean a little bit, and all others are still low. I don't have data for the forages. I hope that during the project these similar figures can be produced, but the general picture is still today, in total, both grain and forage legumes represent no more than 3% of the total European arable land, whereas at the world level, this is 15%. So we need to find a way to increase legume cultivation to supply our consumers, both for human consumption, both the animal feed industry, and to satisfy the requirement of providing the ecosystem services. This slide is just to show a good thing of the legume, but also a difficulty is that we have many different legume species. What is great, some of them adapted to different, particularly to different pedoclimatic conditions or different product uses, but then breeders had the difficulties to focus on each of them. So for some, they are placed in decreasing order relative to the number of cultivars that are registered in Europe, in CPEBO. This don't pay much attention to the some numbers because 2025 when I look it for this, and some of them are protected, so registered with, but not all of them with the BCU, and some of them were registered, but they are probably just registered, but they are not available in the market. But it's just to give an impression on the breeding effort with. So as for some legume crops, there is a substantial number of cultivars registered in Europe, but for most of them, there is very little amount of cultivars, many of them very old, that could be improved. The problem is that breeders, companies cannot focus the needed intensity to all these crops. So in the best, when there are some breeders do an excellent job, but just doing some selection on easy crossings, but cannot go into lengthy pre-breeding using germplant accessions. Or so for this, projects like BELIS are important, and particularly to intensify the public-private collaboration, as we will mention before. So as I said, the major limitation for legume cultivation in Europe is that for decades, legume has been decreasing. So there has been a technological lockdown, and there has been insufficient investment in legume breeding. So they were replaced by other crops that were more suited to the technological advances and were more profitable for farmers. Fortunately, this is changing. But we have not only many different crops, what is good, but then we cannot focus on all of them, but different priorities for this. I refer to a number of publications in an excellent special issue of critical review on plant sciences that where we need to cover the satisfaction of the farmer, so that of course need to make profit from this crop, so need to give a good and stable yield, and for this is important stress resistant performance. It's important the weed management. We cannot go into in detail on this. The consumer satisfaction is also needed, something that probably less attention was paid in the past. So for human food, legume has to be attractive to the consumer with better taste, color, size, appearance, not only just a source of protein. So this needs to be understood as a delicatessen, as a gourmet product. But also the processor, the industry, that now they are canning or manufacturing products, for them they may have different interests, like canning quality, the hulling efficiency, different traits that were probably not considered in the past, and the satisfaction of the society. So pay attention to improve the ecosystem services that the legumes provide for a clean environment, healthy food, and so on. And all of this plays in a system that is sustainable. So we need to improve the cultivar registration, as we mentioned less. We are facing, Europe is not very big, but it's very diverse in agroecological conditions. So breeding needs to be adapted, cultivar needs to be adapted to the different conditions, and there is the need to enlarge the producing areas. So going north, they are becoming interested. So we probably were not in the past so interested in legumes. There is a much growing interest in Nordic area on legumes. So they have different priority traits that probably in the south. So in some areas it's important drought tolerance, sensitivity to photoperiod. For others it's more important heat and drought. So adaptation to either spring crops or winter cycles adapted to the different geographical zones is important, and particularly paying attention to the predicted climatic change that here we see in this picture that in some areas we are experiencing a marked increase in temperatures, whereas for other is mainly affected the rain. So some areas particularly we suffer.
Diego, sorry to interrupt. It seems that we are losing your voice. Now, yes.
Because I lost the battery.
Yeah.
To the chest. So I go without the headphone. So particularly now in the frame of the new conditions, with the priority of more environmental friendly and food security, we need for pay attention to new breeding targets that were probably neglected in the past, where attention was paid more probably to high input agriculture. So now novel traits are regaining importance, like for instance, it's important to pay more attention to resource use efficiency, not only nitrogen, but also phosphorus or mobilization of nutrients from the soil, and also pay attention to improve symbiotic performance and resilient production in the context of climatic change. So more attention is needed to plant and root architecture to different ecological services or to different uses. And the point is how to select for this. So for that, this will be covered by colleagues later. So I will just mention that at Work Package 3 in BELIS, we are focusing on refining screening protocols for a number of traits that will be then used in another work package. So there are existing number of phenotyping platforms are already in use, but also portable imaging systems like drones or robots that go to the field. But we are mainly needing affordable phenotyping that is reliable enough, but fast and cheap as to be used in routine screening that need to use massive amount of accessions in segregating population. And then, okay, once we are able to identify the needed traits, how to use that in breeding. There are a number of new breeding tools that are very rapidly being adopted by the different programs to reduce the period of the number of years needed to produce a new cultivar. In legumes, double haploid is difficult, but the speed breeding protocols do exist now for most of the legumes and are being adopted by breeders. Market assistance selection, all the genomic tools are progressing very rapidly in recent years. Just to give you an example, in the last 10 years, the genome sequence of almost all the legume species has been sequenced, and for pea was only very recently, and now there are already 3 genomes available, and there are several consortiums working on pangenomes. So there is a very rapid progress on genomic methods that are being adopted, and genomic selection is currently in use for some crops. Paolo will cover on this. I will just comment also that, okay, we have identified new traits. We know how to select for this trait. We know how to develop new cultivars. But what happens when a cultivar is already produced? So then, in order to be adopted by farmers and widely cultivated, first they have to be registered and then demonstrated and introduced in the seed market. So this is also covered in a work package in BELIS, because there are still need to uniformize and improve systems. So there is first the distinctness, uniformity, and stability. So there are problems in distinctness, particularly in forages in which are allogamous in which you can prove the genetic progress, but the morphological traits fail to show that they are distinct, and the molecular markers are not fully adopted yet by the system. So there is a lot of room to do there. Also, with the uniformity, there are issues, particularly in the autogamous and partially allogamous species like faba bean, in which some species some cultivars are rejected, I will not comment further. And so then we also have the issue of organic heterogenic materials. That is already, there is a legislation, European legislation for that in Europe, what is good. But there is also the concern, the open discussion on to extend this to non-organic markets. And there is also the debate on establishing a registration for farmers variety. Also for BCU, that is available only for a few crops. And there is the need to standardize the process, particularly to do uniformize among countries, because if you register a cultivar in Finland, for instance, then you can commercialize in Greece or in Spain, and has not been tested under those conditions. So it's better to establish a network by agri-zones and to uniformize the system. And just to the final comment, that is how to improve the system. This is probably a personal recommendation, is as breeding program in Europe for most of the crops are too small. We need to facilitate the public breeding partnership, and suggestion is to take the model. It is done by Pulse Canada or GRDC in Australia, where they have a levy system with returns to public breeders. So the breeding is mainly done by public university or institute funded by breeding. In Europe, we have that only in France for only some grains, legumes, the cotisation volontaire obligatoire. That is not the perfect model, but it's the best example that I can find in Spain. And I wish we could adopt that to facilitate the public-private partnership and to enhance the involvement of the producers, funding the research, establishing the priorities, and then monitoring the progress.
Diego, I'm deadly sorry to interrupt, but I have the ugly role of a moderator, and time is flying. Yes.
With this, I just need to say thank you and give the role to the next one. This is the last one. So now, Carlota, I think.
We cannot hear you, Carlota. You're muted.
Mute. Now I think you can, right?
Yes.
And you can see my screen too, right?
Yes. Just go ahead. Thank you.
Great. So I will, after this presentation from Diego, I will just highlight a few details more related to a few new traits more related to grain legumes that were already starting to be highlighted by Diego. And indeed, it's just to how do you say, to try to focus or to give some more attention to particular traits that are important in grain legumes. And I just put here this photo to highlight one thing. Traditional breeding objectives on grain legumes have been mainly focused on the, of course, the concerns from farmers. And many of us are farmers or work with farmers or work for farmers. And these traits would be like yield or yield stability and tolerance to biotic or abiotic stresses. But more recently, these traits, also the traits that are important for farmers, have been a little bit changed. And now they have, I would say, to enlarge the scope. And this have been focused also on breeding for increasing crop diversity. And this will, as already been said, will need an investment on a larger number of species that need to be adapted to diverse agroclimatic conditions and product uses. And that is why I am mentioning it in here, but also to different cropping system diversity. And this Paolo will cover on the next presentation. And this is also have to be focused also more and more detail, or giving more attention to the adaptation to changing agroclimatic conditions. And this is not only because the European climate is on a move. We all have noticed that. It's not something new. It's already here. We, especially on our Mediterranean region, we are feeling it very, very hard. And the climate change has really increased the environmental instability. So this is something that we breeders cannot forget, and all the researchers that are working on this. So our climates are indeed not predictable anymore. This was something that we were used to on Mediterranean conditions, but now it's all over Europe. And many different traits are important within the European conditions. And this, we are seeing that there is an increased occurrence of heat waves, drought events, and even unexpected floods. So all of these different traits are important. But also, when we are thinking about expanding the production of legumes to increase the area of production in Europe, this means that we need to go to the northern regions, and so, or just because we need to anticipate sowing to avoid the droughts at the end of the production cycle, we will also face producers also will face low temperatures. So also this is another trait that somehow contradicts the first one, but it indeed complements. So we need to be aware of many, many different traits. And finally, and this is quite important for the food uses of these grain legumes, is that there will be an increased frequency or intensity of pests that damage seeds, for instance, and so that will indeed be something we need to take into account, especially when there is this predicted scenario of a sharp decrease in pesticides uses in Europe. So all of that need to be taken into account. And so moving a little bit to the consumers, and as it was said by Diego already, traditionally the quality objectives were mainly focused on protein yield, and also a little bit on the reduction of a few undesirable compounds, and that could be, for instance, a few oligosaccharides in lentils, or phytate in pea, or even the example of vicin, convicin in faba beans, or a few anti-nutritionals on grass pea. But more recently, we also need to focus on breeding for sensory and processing traits. And these are the ones that are important not only for consumers, but also for processors. And indeed, we are all consumers. So this is something that is closer to all of us. Of course, not all of us work on this area, but it's something that we have in our minds. So when you are thinking about buying food, we, of course, think about nutritional value. We think about the production region, so not to have big production chains. Of course, the price is important. That could never be forgotten. But indeed, the main trait that consumers use to choose their food is taste. Although we don't think about it at the beginning, it is taste that, if it is a good taste, we will buy it the second time. Maybe it's not the first trait we think about it, but taste is really important. And in here, we are thinking about these basic taste qualities like sweet, sour, bitter, salty, or umami that is so important or typical from a few of our grain legumes, and even a certain textures. And all of this are traits that we are starting to think about it also when we are thinking about grain legumes. And all of this are also, these traits are significantly associated with specific metabolites. So indeed, not only quality or this kind of not so innovative traits, but they are also related to other traits like, for instance, disease resistance, or even, of course, production. But not only final consumers, and when we're thinking about home consumption, this could be the leading trait that leads consumer choices, but we have to think about intermediate food business, and especially on more processed food. This is a very, very important industry right now, and it's growing very fast. And I'm talking about, like, for instance, food business related to nutraceuticals, or the production of functional foods, or ultra-processed foods made of recombinant ingredients, like, for instance, meat and dairy products replacers, or even nutritional supplements that can be isolated from grain legumes. So in this case, breeders need to focus on traits that are related to the facility to isolate particular compounds that are the most valuable for them, and to increase the contents in grain legumes. So, like, for instance, the protein content, it's always there, it's true, but for a different objective, and also fiber or starch concentrates and isolates. So this leads us to my final slide, and it is, okay, we know that all these traits are important, are there. That means that breeders have to, especially the ones working on food legumes, grain legumes, have to now broaden a little bit all the traits that they have to take into account when they are selecting, if they want to be successful. But then we need to have the tools to do this kind of selection. And this is a very important part of the BELIS project, as was already mentioned. And the approaches that we tried to implement during our project are that we are not trying to find out phenotypic or phenotyping tools that we can adapt from other species if they already exist, because some of them are quite specific from species to species, but we can still adapt it. We are also developing new tools when there's nothing available for a specific trait species combination, or we are refining tools that already exist, especially to make them more high throughput, because for breeders, and you can imagine that this kind of more detailed traits normally are associated with very complex or labor intensity screenings, and we need to simplify this. So examples for that, and just very briefly, I told you about, there was this, on the case of all the traits related to disease and pest resistance, we are working, for instance, on 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗏𝗂𝗏. It's one of it's a parasitic plant, but it is appearing now much northern regions in Europe. So we have to start working also to transfer this knowledge to the northern breeders that now have to focus on that. That's especially on the pests that also affects the quality of the seeds, like, for instance, brucus, weevils. We have also to refine the tools that already are available and make them more easy and high throughput accessible. And then when we are thinking about quality traits, like, for instance, just if you think about protein content, not only it can be, we have to find a low cost and efficient methodology to analyze this. And this could be, like, as breeders are already doing, using spectroscopy methodology like NIRS or 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗏𝗏. But indeed, unfortunately, these methodologies are also specific for the equipment where you develop the models, the prediction models. So we are also trying to, in a cooperation between different partners, to make the development of this predictive models the most efficient possible. And then also try to find out this kind of models for traits that are normally not tested, like, for instance, the ones related to flavor, like aroma volatiles, or astringency and in the umami flavor that I already told you about. And so we are trying to find out ways of screening for these more complex traits that are important for consumers and processors in a more efficient way. And this is just to give you a little bit of the flavor of what we do at BELIS in this particular subject. And if I'm not mistaken, I will pass now the word to Paolo, that will focus now more on the forage legumes. Thank you. And I'll stop sharing now.
So there are many emerging new traits also for forage crops. Some are associated to the need to adapt to climate change. First of all, tolerance to drought, but also various others. And, oh, sorry. It's not working. Good. And then there is adaptation to organic farming or low input farming and intercropping. This is complicating the breeder's work because, for example, if we take drought tolerance, evaluating material under favorable conditions will produce very little or no result for drought-prone regions because of the low or even nil genetic correlation that we find between the two conditions. And then several emerging forage quality traits too for food use, feed use, etc., and the digestibility, for example. But then also various traits in the perspective of the use of forages for protein isolates, etc. And again, this is complicating our work because the higher the number of target traits, the lower the progress that we could do by breeding for each of the traits. And then others like suitability as a cover crop. And for example, in the case of lucerne, the plant idotype useful for this use is pretty different to the one for the ordinary cultivation. Now, we would ideally like relatively simple solutions to complex problems. And sometimes agroecological breeding can provide us with some solutions. For example, in breeding for intercropping, which is potentially very complex, no? Different species, varieties. Now, if we consider altogether the value of the genetic correlation between pure stand and intercropping, no? Which is the value that will decide the need of breeding for intercropping or not. We see that considering a number of studies on grain legumes or forage legumes, well, this value is clearly affected at the extent of competition on the focus species, expressed as the ratio between mixed stand and pure stand on a same unit area. That is, when the value is 1, it means that on average, it means that our crop will produce about the same in pure stand and in intercropping. But when the value gets lower than 1, then the legume is under competition, increasing competition. And it is exactly there that we find that the genetic correlation tend to decrease. And it is then that we need to breed for intercropping. In the end, it doesn't really matter. Normally, the species that we want to intercrop is mainly a matter of competitive stress. And another example of agroecologically-based approaches would be in the long term to breed heterogeneous, genetically heterogeneous varieties of inbred crops to have greater adaptability and yield stability. Now, very most of the key traits are under polygenic control. I'm showing this as an example for lucerne, and this is true not only for biomass, for crop yield, but also for quality traits, different ones like NDF and NDF digestibility, crude protein. You can see that there are different areas of the genome linked to these traits, or in the GWAS graph for protein content in lucerne, you can see different peaks in different areas of the genome, meaning that genomic selection would be the best approach to deal with that. And genomic selection have various potential advantages. First of all, lower evaluation cost per genotype, especially so when we are selecting for several traits. So with a great saving just using genotyping for that, instead of the evaluation for all the different traits. And this allows for more effective multi-trait selection, because then it's enough just the genotyping, and then having different genomic selection models for the different traits, we could have a better, a more effective selection, because we could have a greater number of genotypes that we can screen. Then it provides for a simpler account of QTL effects, because operationally we will have a statistical model that is already assigning the right weight to each marker, and each QTL sets. And of course, shorter selection cycles, which is particularly important for perennials. Now, there are some important differences between genomic selection in inbred and outbred species, and particularly in outbred species, when we select synthetic varieties, what we ought to do is genotyping parents and then phenotyping their progenies, their live-seed progenies, because in this way we are modeling the additive genetic variation that we can exploit for breeding. There are now many studies that are providing predictive ability estimations for genomic selections. That is the correlation between predicted and observed values. And I'm showing here just as an example traits for which 𝗕𝗃 promoted or was involved in their study. And you can see, for example, that in general, predictive ability values are higher for inbred crops than the outbred lucerne, where anyway also phenotypic selection is hindered by the fact that it is the narrow sensory ability what matters. So with lower predicted gain anyway, then there is also a trend for stress-prone environments to be less predictable than moisture-favorable ones. Anyway, predictions for quality traits tend to be pretty high, and even the prediction for tolerance to diseases like rust in pea or anthracnose in wet lupin are pretty good, because even these traits are determined by various genes. And in this table, the most important, the most reliable figures are those in red, where we are considering the situation of predictions for different environments and independent material. But what we probably need most at this stage is studies in which we assess the actual genetic gains that we could get from genomic selection. And I'm providing here a couple of examples. One is for pea, in which genomic selection was able to predict correctly the material that was top performing, mid or bottom performing for grain yield under severe drought. And then two examples for lucerne, for completely different genetic bases, completely different genomic selection models. These are preliminary results, but you can see that in both cases, genomic selection is providing an advantage over the unselected genetic base, while phenotypic selection, which is, as I said, very difficult in lucerne, is not providing this advantage. And key issues to consider are inter alia, I think, the ability of one model that we developed for one genetic base to be applied to another genetic base, because it takes time, it takes investment to develop a genomic selection model. So we have to know to which extent we could apply it. And this was explored, for example, for lucerne in two completely unrelated genetic bases. And one could see that applying one model to the other, one would lose about 50–60% of predictive ability, meaning that it could still be used in some cases. No? Other key issues for genomic selection are our ability to predict across different environments and especially across different target regions. The usefulness of incorporating genotype by environment interactions and environments information into predictions, the cost benefit of different marker panels, for example, in Lucerne would be genotyping by sequencing versus a recent alfalfa-𝗕𝗏𝗏 panel, and then for tetraploids such as Lucerne, the allele dosage, how to estimate that. And then, of course, innovative selection techniques may come from phenomics, phenotyping platforms, managed environments. Now, phenotyping platforms and managed environments are important, especially to select for stress tolerance to climate stresses such as drought or cold, because of the increasing climate unpredictability across years. No? Then important help could come from techniques based on the field robotics or photogrammetry, especially I think to estimate the yield of forage crops when there is a high cost in estimating the biomass yield across different harvests and different years. And finally, we have phenomics-aided estimation of specific traits, most of them associated to stress tolerance. And you see here an example of these traits that are used in our work for BELIS. And that's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paolo. We are running, well, time is running really fast. So, and yeah, so I think that it's better that we go directly to our next slot in the agenda. We have a question. We will address it afterwards. So if you have any other questions, please type them in the Q&A section. So we are now going with our project coordinator, Bernadette Juliet from INRAE France, who is going to present the BELIS project. So we go directly with you, Bernadette. You have the floor.
Yes, thank you. So I will share my screen. Okay. Okay, so yes, I'm working at INRAE, the French National Institute for Agriculture, Food and Environment.
Sorry, Bernadette, could you put that in presentation mode?
Yeah, it's coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So I am the coordinator of BELIS, and I will try to show you the content very briefly of the project and what are our ambitions. So first, starting from the concept of the project, we have identified, in particular during the writing of this paper, we presented different lock-ins in the expansion of legumes, and especially in the genetic part of the question. We have true problems with genetic progress. We have some lock-ins in the regulatory. We have some lock-ins in the recommendation of legume species and varieties. And we have also some lock-ins in the budget for all the studies on legumes. So we have starting by trying to see what we could do to increase legume breeding efficiency, starting from the identification of the traits that are needed, that need some improvement. And we know we have to base our work on genetic resources and also breeding materials. And we are using some knowledge coming from previous and current projects. Then this breeding will produce improved varieties. They have to go to registration process, in which we could probably increase the efficiency. Then when we have varieties registered, they are evaluated in a post-registration process, and they go to recommendation, and the farmers have to get this recommendation. And then we have to think about the cooperative models for legume breeding. So BELIS is working on many species, 7 grain legumes and 7 forage legumes. Not all of them are studied at the identical level, but we are working on these species. Our ambition is also to set up a BELIS platform composed of a BELIS network that will be presented in the next presentation, but also a portfolio of training and dissemination. And this platform is open to all people who are interested in legume in general and legume breeding in particular. So breeders, extension services, registration offices, researchers, and food and feed industry. The 3 main objectives of BELIS is first to develop tools and methodologies for cost-effective breeding programs and deliver proofs of concept with and for breeders. It is also to facilitate the economic and regulatory environment, so about variety registration, variety recommendation, and cooperative models, and to implement an efficient, ambitious, and durable transfer of innovation through the BELIS platform that includes this network of breeders and actors from scientific research, extension services, seed, food, and seed industry, as well as a training portfolio. So here, the list of our 14 legume species, so grain and forage legumes. Grain legumes are used for food. It's quite seldom for forage legumes. All these species, or most of them, are used for feed. Grain legumes are commonly used for poultry, pigs, and forage legumes for ruminants. And all of them provide ecosystem services, but forage legumes, especially perennial ones, offer more ecosystem services. The partnership of BELIS is based on 34 partners from research or from seed industry mostly. But we have also on board a registration office and 3 extension services and an institute in charge of education. And some of the research institutes are also breeders. And this flower, I would say, of partners are also rooting or feeding themselves from different other stakeholders composed of consumers, farmers, and industry. So we are spread over Europe and associated countries for some partners. This project is an innovation and action project in the wording of European Union. And so the TRL, that is a technology readiness level that ranks from 1 to 9. The expected TRL are from 5 to 7 at the end of the project. Meaning that we have to validate and demonstrate our results. So we are working with and for breeders and other stakeholders. A few examples of our project already mentioned by my colleagues. For example, we have the ambition to have a high throughput phenotyping, and here an example with the estimation of plant height or biomass from drone flight. And we have some implementation by partners from breeders' plot with breeders' material and the application in breeding. But we will also refine or share other phenotyping methods related to different stress resistance and quality traits. We are also developing high throughput genotyping, and in particular, the development of a grain legume genotyping array, aiming at working at different species, grain legume species. And the objective is to have a genotyping cost of the genotyping unit lower than the plot cost. But with these tools and other genotyping tools, we will also genotype different plant collections of different species with genetic resources, breeding material, and this is to have a better use of genetic diversity in the future. And also we have the ambition to use these markers to assist distinctness tests in variety registration. We are also developing tools for molecular markers, and the idea is to revise breeding methods to speed up genetic gains, and so to identify markers associated to traits, as mentioned by Paulo before, and also to develop prediction or improve prediction equations for genomic selection. And we are going towards a proof of concept in breeding schemes during the project to test the efficiency of these methods. We will improve variety registration, or at least propose some changes in variety registration. We would like to show that it could be interesting to benefit from phenotyping capacities in the EU countries, and we will test the relevance of EU network at agri-zone scales, and so to share different common control varieties across EU members at an agri-zone level, and this will give us a sum of data, so more data, and at the end, the decision for variety registration will be taken at the member state level. So no change at this scale. But also we would like to improve variety recommendation and gather, this means gather data from variety value and market, but we will also model adaptation of legume species and variety types in the EU. And finally, we want to improve breeding cooperation and support legume breeding that has no enough financial support so far. And we will study some, have case studies and living labs to see what is the best what are the best cooperation models with different actors, so private breeders, public breeders, but also research, cooperative, extension, and processing industries. And we will also evaluate the effect of public policies on this legume breeding organization. So our objective at the end is really to communicate and disseminate results and information during the project and beyond. And it's why we want to establish this BELIS network to activate flow of information and cooperation among actors. And the final aim, of course, is increasing nitrogen fixation and protein production in Europe for sustainability and sovereignty. So this is the end of my presentation.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. That was a really nice presentation. In this way, everyone attending today has a clearer picture of what BELIS is. Thank you, Bernadette. And thank you also to the people who raised some questions in the Q&A section. And thank you very much, Paolo, for taking the time for typing the answers. And thank you very much appreciated. We are going directly to our next slot today, which is the presentation from 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗪 from 𝗕𝗂𝗏𝗪𝗏, presenting the BELIS network. So directly to you, Claire, you have the floor.
Okay, thanks, Joachim. Can you see my screen on the good way?
No, it is not in presentation mode, but we can see your screen.
Yeah, okay. Now I have to change, yeah, right?
Let me see. It is coming.
Okay, I think now it's good.
Yes, there you go.
Okay, so as I already mentioned, I will now present you the BELIS network, its aim and activities, and present why it could be interesting for you to join this network, and a more practical point of view how to join. And then we will have this interactive session with few questions as at the beginning of the webinar. So regarding the BELIS Network's aim, you already have understood its aim, which is first to make available the knowledge obtained during the project to people, to the stakeholders in the network, and also to facilitate exchange and collaboration among stakeholders, in other words, networking. So we think that this network could be a gate to transfer BELIS outputs on one side and to connect legume breeding actors across the EU and associated countries on the other side. As you may know, some networks already exist, so we seek for opportunities to cooperate with these networks in order to avoid any overlapping activities and not to do the same thing as already existing networks. To build this network, we have a network advisory board composed of few persons from the BELIS project that will ensure proper monitoring of the network activities to be sure it corresponds to the needs of the stakeholders. And we would like, if the networks meets the needs of the legume breeding community, to make this network live after the end of the project with aim and mission defined with the stakeholders of the network. But now let's focus on the BELIS network activities during the BELIS network project, so to 2028. On the first point, to facilitate access to BELIS results, we propose here are suggestions of activities. Of course, they can evolve, and new suggestions are welcome. So we propose to have a newsletter to regularly inform you about the project progress, new findings and upcoming events. We can also propose some surveys to refine some specific needs for training or webinar, identify thematics of interest that you would like to work on. We will organize webinars like today on results dissemination from BELIS, but also on some specific webinars on specific thematics that the stakeholders from the network is interested in. We would like also to propose some structured feedback session to gather feedback from stakeholders on the usefulness and potential application of the project results. And one very important point is also, and organized by Antonio and 𝗕𝗏𝗏, is training activities. So it will be in-person session to train stakeholders on how to use some results we obtained in BELIS. The other point of our networks is to facilitate exchange and collaboration. And for that, we would like to organize some open field days, or in other words, in-person meetings. During these days, we could share knowledge and meet, exchange ideas, identify synergies or potential collaboration opportunities. We could also organize some online meetings that will be networking events, but online, with, for instance, short presentation from stakeholders, roundtables or group discussion. We, of course, as mentioned before, want to connect with other existing networks, not to make twice the same thing. So here are some named. Legume Generation is a sister project of BELIS, a European project working on the same thematic. I think most of you know the International Legume Society or other network, local or international. We will also we are thinking of also study funding opportunities from national or international calls, or from direct collaboration among members. So if from this network some new projects can raise, it will be great. So now, why to join? So if you join the BELIS network, and thanks for the ones who already have joined the BELIS network, it will give you the opportunity to access BELIS research results, to also connect with other actors from the legume breeding, breeders, industry leaders, researchers across Europe and beyond, participate in events like this webinar, training session, and networking opportunities, etc. And this network is free to access. Membership is free during all the project duration, still until September 30, 2028. Now, how to join? So I first send you an email with a PDF file, so you can send it, fill it and send it back to me. Some of you already did it, but now we also have put a membership form online on the BELIS website. So here you have a QR code to go directly to the page. Maybe Antonio or Joachim, you could also add the link in the chat for people to have the direct link to go to this page. So you have you click on this join to the BELIS network, you will arrive on a form where you can fill out the membership when you can fill out the membership with your details, and also review and accept the terms and conditions. That is for the BELIS network. Now I propose you to go to an interactive session. The first question will be more to know a bit more about who are today in this webinar, and then it will be more about the network activities, whether you find these activities good or less interesting, and also if you have some more ideas for the future. So here is my first question. You can use the same link as before. Maybe Joachim and Antonio, you can share it again, or use the QR code. And the first question is, what is your connection to legume breeding? As we aim to have in our network some all actors connected to legume breeding, from breeding activities, but also seed industry, feed and food industry, variety registration, research and development, and we, sorry. Okay, I don't move anymore. Yeah. I will escape the presentation mode because we have more options. Yes. Okay, so I don't know how to do this. I will stay in presentation mode.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm very sorry because there are some more options, but we cannot see them after seed industry, I think. But so we can have only the first answers. But what we can see is that we mainly have people from research and development as well as from breeding. That is quite natural. A few people from variety registration. So thank you for being here. From extension service also. And very few from feed and food industry. So I hope we will find a way to attract more, to be more attractive to this, actors that are not as close as breeders or researchers to breeding, legume breeding, but that are very important and for networking and collaboration also. So from feed and food industry, seed industry, or even extension services. So if you have all answered the question, I propose that we go to the following question. that is, what is your biggest challenge in legume breeding or connected activities? So could you please, at the beginning, put some keywords? It's yeah, to have an idea of what is for you the big challenges we are facing today concerning legumes. So we have yield stability, biotic resistance. Yeah, yield stability is very huge. Weed control, lack of resources. Is it genetic resources? Abiotic, yield potential, disease resistance, competitiveness, yes. Biotic and abiotic resistance, yield and protein content balance. So we have mainly some traits from plant breeding, and also some words appear about competitiveness and okay, there are a lot of words. Production, nitrogen fixation, new traits for distinctness. Thank you for the registration team to say that. So anti-nutrients, waterlogging, genetic resources, processing traits, lodging, pests, price of genotyping. So yeah, we have this in mind in the BELIS project. Weeds scenario. Okay, I think that some words are a bit too alone, like chain, not the value. But I guess the value chain. So yes, there is a topic that we really aim to study in the BELIS project is, of course, there is all these traits that you are working on as breeder or researcher, biotic stability, biotic and abiotic resistance, disease, etc. But there is also this idea of a value chain competitiveness that is also at the heart of the BELIS project. Okay, so I propose that you have some few seconds more to finish typing your words, and then we can go to the next question. New traits for distinctness, lentil yield stability and drought tolerance. Okay, so we have finished with the question. Okay, one person is more. And then we will go to the next question. Okay, so now it's in order to, with this topic of being able not to overlap existing network, but to be complementary to this existing network, could you please indicate if you are already a member of any professional network, like International Legume Society, EVA network, or network at a local, national scale, or European scale or international scale, on specific crops or on many crops? Yeah, if we can have some name, it's of interest for us, and to see whether you are already in networks or not. So here we have CREA, 𝗕𝗘𝗟𝗏, I don't know how to pronounce it, RELEG, which is the Spanish Legume Network, EVA network, Symbiotic Nitrogen Fixation, University of Udine, Rencontre francophone sur les légumineuses, Legume Hub, Legume Net, Increase Network, Asociación Española de Leguminosas, Dano Soja, yeah, okay, the International Legume Society, 𝗘𝗂𝗟𝗏𝗧, International Legume Society, appear twice. Spanish also, increased network. EU cuisine. Okay, so thanks a lot for this information because it's very interesting to see that. And if you are not in a network, you can also type no. So the no will be wider and wider if people are not in a network. So we can also have this idea of interest for a network for people who are not currently in a legume network. Okay, so thanks a lot for all your answers. Now, yeah, here are the activities. You will find the activities that we propose for the moment in the network, in the BELIS network. And could you please rank it from 1 that seems unrealistic to you to 5 very likely to participate? So yeah, can you please answer this question so we can design a network that is corresponding to the stakeholder needs. So yeah, we have in first webinars, training activities, open field days, networking, online meetings. So it's interesting to see that both sides of the network are of interest for you. On one side, yeah, transfer of knowledge, but also networking. So we have also surveys, so we can, yeah, have some interaction with stakeholders and make the good presentation interesting all the participants. Webinars, open field days. So yeah, the 2 sides of the network could interest you. Okay, as now time is running, we are already 11:30. I suggest that you have some few seconds more to finish answering, and then we can go to the last question, and I will be then done with my network presentation. Okay, so thanks a lot for all these answers that will help us to design a good network. And now, if you have any ideas, what topics would you like to see covered in future webinars? So if you have a specific topic in mind, either on a specific species or on a specific thematic or on results from BELIS, you can suggest any ideas. Okay, genotypic solution for soy and pea, private-public cooperation, chickpea, dry bean, strategy for yield increase, lupin, phenotyping method, international cooperation, nutritional values of legume, quinoa, value chain market expectation, European legume seed sector, international cooperation, phenotyping for aphids, phenotypic collection species, pea, tools for better phenotyping, pea, faba bean, lupins. Okay, everything is of interest. Phenomics, faba bean, on-farm breeding, advanced breeding methods, white lupin, great interest in white lupin. So envirotyping, NG by E, international cooperation. Okay, it's moving. It's a bit difficult to see what are the new words. Legume in Mediterranean, in diet, annual forage legumes. So maybe we are also thinking to organize something by a species group. If we do, yeah, we can also organize some webinars on specific species that would not interest all the network, but we can try to cover all the interest that we find in the network. So thank you for all these answers. Yeah, I let the last participant put his ID, and then we will stop for this question. Thank you so much. So now we are done with this BELIS Network presentation. Thank you all for your participation to this interactive session. I hope it was nice for you to have the possibility to answer this question. We have this final discussion and Q&A. I don't know whether we have time to take a few questions or not. Maybe Antonio or Joachim, can you?
Yeah, Claire, thank you. Well, if it is really quick, we could get one or two questions. We already got some in the Q&A section, really nicely answered by Paolo and Bernadette and the colleagues. And yeah, if anyone has a quick question, just type it there or ask for we open your mic. And if not, I will ask you, our colleagues Bernadette, Carlota, Paolo, Diego, to briefly comment on the questions that you have answered. If you would like to add something on the answers that you gave to these interesting questions, something that you would like to highlight on these comments that you received. Maybe Paolo, that you got some of the questions. Would you like to highlight briefly something?
Yes, there were a few questions offered by the responsible of the EVA network, Sandra, and they were dealing with the possible genomic predictions of accessions into germplasm collections, which I believe is something very important, very feasible, because we have these large collections and genotyping them it has got much cheaper than evaluating them, even for a few traits. So technically, the best thing would be just to consider that as a unique kind of genetic base for which we are developing models for individual traits. And this is something that even my group in CREA started to work on P, for example, etc. And I see a future on that, because even if predictions are not so high, still they could help us subset the accessions of possible interest then for evaluation.
Thank you very much, Paolo. We are really running out of time, but I will ask you, Bernadette, just at the end, before I close. I just would like to ask Carlota and Diego just to, as we said, give a highlight, something headline that you would like to give really briefly, probably related to the comments and questions.
Yes, thanks. Yes, two comments maybe. First one on genotyping of genetic resources. I think it's really important, in fact, to describe the collection, to manage them, but also to be able to use these genetic resources for breeding, introduction of new diversity. And with markers, it could be much easier. And the other point is also to mention that we are working with a sister project, Legume Generation, and we are really pleased to have connection with them. So we are sharing the information about the webinar, and probably in the future we will do more. So it's very important. So both of us are working on genetics of legume. This is my few words.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. I see that we don't have any other questions, so if no one else would like to highlight something, we are really close to the end of the session. Let me just put that in here for you to see it, and then I would like to say thank you to all our panelists speakers today. Thank you, Bernadette. Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Antonio. Thank you, Paolo, Carlota, and thank you, Diego. Thank you very much. This is now the end of this webinar. BELIS Network, Legume Breeding for Agroecological Transition in Europe, organized in the framework of the Horizon Europe Project BELIS. We would like to thank all of those who joined the session, and of course, our BELIS partner who have presented the project and the paper and the BELIS Network. We now close this webinar, and thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.